Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so here is the thing. I discover new things about myself, about my journey, and about the world around me every day because I'm a human being. I have discovered a couple of things recently that blew my mind. One of them was something called the World Economic Forum, and I guess I live in a cave, but I'm going to discuss that, and I'm also going to discuss corruption. So stick around. My name is Jeff Mohr. I'm the Northwoods Carver, and thanks for seeing what I saw. So I'm going to preface this video by saying a few things. Number one, I had no idea until the last couple of years maybe that there was such a thing as the World Economic Forum. I guess it's held in Davos, Switzerland. And this whole thing just seems kind of creepy to me, and almost it's a surreal. I guess how come I never knew about this? Like, how is it YouTube that brought it to my attention? You bet. I guess I never. It's just not a conspiracy thing. It's a real thing that goes down every year, and I'm very concerned. For my fellow human beings that live on this planet that do not have a reptilian brain. So when I say reptilian, I mean, the zillionaires, the godzillionaires that think they can own the planet and get water rights to the entire planet. Those types of folks, not your average taxi driver, not your average chainsaw carver, but we're talking about zillionaires, and I am very, very I was kind of pleased to see this lawyer get up and speak there, talking about greed and corruption, and when he's in a room full of probably the greediest and most corrupt people on the face of the earth, literally in billions of, I don't know how many billions of dollars that these people generate, or trillions of dollars. I don't know. They're all from all over the world, so maybe trillions. There is a point in which he discusses the overall corruption on a world level, and I think it's interesting, and hopefully you'll stick around long enough to hear the end of this. But for now, these are prepared remarks of Attorney General John Ashcroft. He's talking about the fight of corruption, and in this instance, he says, the fight against corruption has commanded my attention since my first days of service as Attorney General. My first international responsibility was to lead the U.S. delegation to the Second World Forum on Corruption held in Hague in 2001. In the intervening years, the international effort against terrorism has not been obscured by my dream of government integrity and public trust. In fact, last month, I joined with officials of 94 other nations in Mérida, Mexico, for the signing of the landmark United Nations International Convention Against Corruption. Just as our most basic ideas of liberty and the rule of law can be traced back to the time of Hammurabi, can the threat corruption poses of those ideas. Moses warned the children of Israel, quote, "Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous." Muhammad, referring to giving what is due, the people said, quote, "Give full measure and full weight in justice. Do not evil in the earth, causing corruption." The 20th century taught us forcefully that free people operating in free markets are the greatest force man has ever known for overcoming the scourge of poverty while creating opportunity and achievement for all. The success of this system, though, depends on the marketplace of integrity. When governments play favorites, when they offer and they award contracts and make decisions based on corruption that favors the connected rather than the competition that favors the citizenry, freedom is stymied. When corruption intrudes, The invisible hand that guides the market is replaced by a greased palm. And officials who pocket payoffs do not just violate the integrity of the marketplace. They tax the poor to benefit the corrupt. They deny their people better roads, cleaner water, and stronger schools. They strangle the culture of productivity that is a death knell of impoverishment and the life force of human achievement. The goal of law enforcement, then, is clear. Equal opportunity in the marketplace must be defended. Trust must not be abused. Confidence must be sustained. The marketplace of integrity must not be contaminated by a corrupt contagion of greed. Shockingly, until recently, corruption, and terrorism for that matter, were viewed as regional problems beyond international discussion and cooperation. In some nations, bribes were actually allowed as tax write-offs, a cost to be deducted at home for doing business abroad. These governments engaged in the delusion that they could subsidize bribe paying abroad while expecting the same companies to behave morally at home. But let me be clear, no society has ever been totally free of corruption. Even the most successful, longest established markets and societies experience corruption. For example, in 2002, the United States Justice Department dealt with more than 1,000 federal prosecutions of corrupt officials on the federal, state, and local levels. Well, in my opinion, it's probably nowhere near enough. If there's that many, there's going to be a lot more. They were catching minnows. All right, so World Bank studies estimate that negative effects of corruption can reduce a country's economic growth rate by as much as a full percentage point each year. That's insane. Okay, overall, the World Bank estimates that the cost of corruption represents about 7% of the annual world economy, roughly $2.3 trillion. This is a staggering amount, a figure that is equal to the entire federal budget of the United States government, $2.2 trillion. Just let that sink in. So if you take all the corruption money, it would equal our deficit. I mean, all the corruption money in the world, like in the not just the United States, but everywhere where people are being paid off to do immoral things or whatever. 2.2 trillion. Think of the jobs, the infrastructure, and the educational system that $2.3 trillion could provide if it were redirected from the personal enrichment of the corrupt to the public service of the people. Think of the rising tide of trust and productivity that would result. A tide that would lift all citizens, especially the poor among us. Today, with the accelerated economic globalization and rapid advances in technology, corruption is a contagion that cannot be contained by borders. Corruption facilitates and perpetuates such transnational criminal activity as organized crime, money laundering, drug trafficking, and the smuggling of human beings. Corruption provides sanctuary to the forces of terror, aiding at the smuggling of biological, chemical, or nuclear weapon materials, and draws the business community into a web of deceit and graft, making them co-conspirators in picking the pockets of ordinary people. After all, if business must pay to gain position, they will make certain that position pays off. Corruption saps the legitimacy of the democratic governments in its extreme forms. Corruption even threatens democracy itself, because democracy lives on trust, and corruption destroys trust. Perhaps worst of all, corruption limits the unique ability of all human beings to flourish in freedom. Austrian economist and Nobel Prize winner Friedrich von Hayek noted in his seminal book, The Road to Serfdom, that when a man is able to pursue his goals unfettered in an open competitive marketplace of integrity, the creative capacity in him is unleashed, benefiting all. Freedom's greatest gift is the availability of every individual to fulfill his or her God-given potential. When corruption robs us of this gift, it diminishes each and every one of us. If corruption is an age-old threat, the 21st century presents us with unparalleled opportunity to defeat it through a combination of visionary leadership, unprecedented cooperation, and openness and transparency. First, leadership. To be sustainable over time, the political will necessary to succeed against corruption requires a moral foundation. Economic and political interest may shift, but the morality of fighting corruption is a constant. It is common ground that all governments and private citizens can and should share. The Honorable Kai Ratu Murungi, the Minister of Justice of Kenya, explained why his country was combating corruption. Quote, "Corruption has killed our children. It has destroyed our society. It's the fundamental cause of the high levels of poverty, unemployment, and social backwardness. For us in Kenya, the fight against corruption is a matter of life and death. It cannot wait for tomorrow. The time is now." Notably, Kenya was the first nation to ratify the UN Anti-Corruption Treaty, and it is to be congratulated for taking the courageous step. But words of leadership must be backed by actions of leadership. And this is my second point: the unprecedented level of cooperation that is developing to combat corruption. Back in the 1970s, investigations by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission revealed unethical and immoral practices on the part of American firms seeking business abroad. In response to the public outrage, the United States passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in 1977. This act, with its strong criminal penalties, influenced American businesses to develop corporate compliance codes and to establish ethical guidelines to fight bribery and corruption, to enlist other countries in the movement towards good governance. The United States strongly supported the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention, which entered into force in 1999, and now has 35 nations working together to help strengthen its implementation. Over the past 10 years, multilateral organizations such as the Organizations of American States, the Council of Europe, and the Southern African Development Community have all committed to some of a mutual peer review process designed to identify, combat, and prevent corruption. In addition, we have seen the creation of the Global Forum on Fighting Corruption and Safeguarding Integrity, which on 2 occasions during the past 3 years has gathered more than 100 nations to discuss ways to combat corruption. Here's my take on this. You have these people holding meetings that nobody knows about on how they can combat corruption. The fact that nobody knows about it and they can swing away with any idea they want is kind of scary, even though it's sort of like all roads to hell are paved with good intentions. Yeah, I'm getting this weird vibe from this, but I digress. Let's continue. We must use the tools of investigation and prosecution to bring the corrupt to justice, but we must also do more. We know from our war against terror that it's not enough after attacks have been perpetrated. To defeat terrorism, we must prevent acts from occurring in the first place. Just as we cannot wait for the next terrorist strike, we must not wait for the next bribe to be paid before moving to stop future corrupt activity. Technology gives us tools, We need to be forward-looking in the fight against corruption to achieve a world in which corruption is not merely prosecuted, but prevented, not merely detected, but deterred. This is my third point. Information or transparency is the enemy of corruption. Corruption feeds and breeds from secrecy and ignorance. It cannot thrive under the light spread by an open, informed society. You remember that part a little bit ago where I said nobody even knows these guys are doing this? Like, how many people out there? I mean, comment below or comment wherever. I had no idea that there was such a thing as a World Economic Forum. And when I hear them talk, the fact that they said they meet, it's not a secret, but nobody knows about it. Not too many. I'll ask anybody I know about World Economic Forum, who's Klaus Schwab. They don't know who these people are. They don't know what's going on. This is happening, and it's shady and sketchy. And if you go on YouTube, you can find them talking about things that would be quite disturbing to your average Joe. It comes across as enlightening, and they're going to do this, and they want to do this to produce this, and it's basically to me it's like a pre-apocalyptic view. Like, this is what we're going to do just before we take over everything, or this is what we're going to do once we take over everything. I don't know, it's one of those two things, but yeah. Okay, so moving on. Today, with the explosive growth of internet and 500-channel digital satellite broadcasting, information has never moved more quickly to more people with more purpose. As the various financial crises and our efforts to deal with corporate scandals in the United States has confirmed, information is the most therapeutic resource we have in achieving integrity in our markets and in our government. When evidence of corruption is presented to the public, institutions are held accountable. In this way, open government becomes an essential tool in creating good government. One example of this is in Uganda, when the government there published the amount of funds allocated to local school districts. The amount actually received by the schools rose from only 28% to 90%, just because it was exposed. Interesting. Transparency and openness facilitates not only a flow of information, but also a flow of capital. This is particularly helpful in developing nations where investors have shown an unwillingness to make large commitments to development efforts without signs of governmental integrity. 28 months ago, all free nations were called to defend freedom from terrorism. Today, we are called to defend freedom from corruption. Each of us must pledge to answer this call, because in the end, government alone cannot promote opportunity and achievement that flourish in the absence of corruption. It is up to business leaders and government leaders alike to set high ethical standards, and if we do, we will turn a zero-sum contest of corruption into a framework of freedom that benefits all. For each word of leadership, we send the unmistakable message that government will not be sold to the highest bidder. With each example of courage, we send a message that the poor will not be held hostage by the greedy and corrupt. And with each act of justice, we send the message that citizens, all citizens, will not be denied the opportunity to achieve a better, more prosperous life in a world of freedom. And there you have it. I read pretty much the whole thing, but it's lengthy, and I tried to get all the good bits in there. But yeah, so let me know what you think. Is this a contradiction in terms? Is this guy speaking to the choir, or is he sending a message on our behalf to the billionaires about corruption and doing things behind closed doors? Even though there's a camera involved, it's on it. I guess you're going to have to do the research yourself. Check out the World Health Forum, or not the World Health Forum, the World Economic Forum. And you tell me what you think. Well, it's the end of the road. And I think I'm going to thank all for sticking through this far. And I guess I'll see you on the next one.
Hey, Iris! Iris! Iris!
Huh? What?
Did you catch any of that?
Yeah, that was crazy. What the hell was that all about?
I don't know about you, but I think Klaus Schwab seems like a super boring James Bond villain.
Yeah,